Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and the governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place due to the outbreak of the coronavirus, this meeting of the Town of Berlin Board of Selectmen will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. The Town of Berlin will use best efforts to post an audio or video recording transcript or other comprehensive record as soon as possible of the meeting on the town's webpage, the town's YouTube channel. Approved minutes will be posted to My Town Government. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to attend the virtual meeting may attend via Zoom webinar platform in one of two ways, with audio and video access, or by telephone audio only. Public comment portion of the agenda to the extent, well, this is public comment. To the extent that our technical capabilities allow, public comments going to be permitted during the public comment portion of this meeting. Attendees' phone numbers and other devices will be muted unless and until they raise their hand and are recognized to speak. If you don't know how to raise your virtual hand, you are attending by video, you can raise your actual hand. I will do my best to call on attendees if appropriate. Well, we'll even shorten it more. I'm just going to say that if you're calling on a landline while in the meeting on a phone, dial *9 on the phone's dial pad to raise your hand. To lower your hand, dial *9 again. And I think that's it. So we'll call this meeting to order at 7:02. We're going to talk with John Laurer of the Conservation Commission. Is he here?
John Annie.
I mean, yeah, I'm sorry.
Banner day, Chris. Well done. Well done.
I know. So if he's here, and he's been promoted.
Right.
Good. So John, right? Yeah.
Wow. Can somebody like take over this meeting? Wow.
Sorry, I should have eaten more. You had asked, or we had asked you, if you'd like to come and talk about the Laurer property, the 100 plus acres on 19 Lyman Road.
Yes.
And to gauge interest, see how people felt about interest in the property and moving forward. It would help the conservation to know so.
Yes. So I think it's pretty well known now that the Laurer family is interested in trying to sell the land there, which abuts the Pisgah conservation land and Olberg land. It's about 100 acres. We have been trying to sort out ways of conserving as much of the land as possible. It would be great if we could try to conserve the entire parcel, but there simply are not funds available sufficient for that right now. So we've been trying to work with the Laurer family on perhaps, purchasing the land and then selling off a few of the road frontage lots as a counterweight to the cost of the land. The current thinking now is we might be able to sell off some lots, make enough money through that, use what's left of the open space money, and perhaps do some fundraising to get the entirety. Sudbury Valley trustees would work as the intermediary. The Laurer family, their chief primary agenda is to sell the land. I think that, they have an interest in some of it being conserved, but that is not their primary agenda. Their primary agenda is to sell the land. So we have to sort of figure out a way to make it as palatable to them as possible, this process. So we've been working closely with some of our trustees and other interested parties to try to come up with some plans. We don't have anything ironclad yet. We are, my understanding is that the only funds we have available from the town are that, which is in the open space fund. So we're trying to develop a plan with those restrictions.
Is there anybody that has any questions thus far?
Excuse me, through the chair, folks can do what you said, and a reminder that they could use the chat function. I think the chat function is set up tonight to reach everyone, so any questions could come through that as well.
So, John, you talked about selling off a couple of the parcels so that it wouldn't be as expensive for the town. And you have a ballpark for what the land would cost so that people will know?
Oh, I have very specific figures, but I am not ready to talk about numbers yet.
Okay. That's fine.
So, what we have in the open space fund currently is about a little shy of $190,000. That's what's in the open space fund. That money gets, we get additional funds in the fall from the Solomon Pond fund. We get 50,000 every fall from that. And I think there's 5 more installments, and then it ends forever. I believe the money from the Highland Mall is done. So, that's the money available from us that is essentially town money. It's open space money. It's earmarked. The open space funds can only be used for purchasing open space. But we're not identifying any other funds at this point that are town funds for the purchase of this land, because to the best of my knowledge, none are available.
And Margaret, you might want to just say what you had recommended to the board too, and the reasons why.
Yeah, initially we had talked about, pre-COVID, we had talked about the possibility of using some free cash toward this purchase. When COVID hit, everything was left up in the air. We ended up, reducing our budget. We used very little of our free cash, I have to say, toward funding the FY21 budget, primarily because we are projecting that we're in for a tough couple of years moving forward. That's not to say that town funds can't be used later. And I know when the board spoke with John most recently, that there was discussion about waiting this out, seeing what was going to happen this fall, and maybe being able to come back in the fall with something to be able to consider this. So I don't think that that's off the table, but we are in a very, very uncertain time financially, and that's why there's more concern now than there was before COVID.
Very understandable.
Does either of the board members have any questions or comments?
Well, John, this is Peg. I mean, I think that we have a bit of an advantage because we've been in meetings and had chats before, but for the 22 folks that are on in the attendee side, what are you asking for them or from them or need help for them to do? I think that might make it a little bit clearer as to why you're here.
Um, I mean, eventually, I mean, if we are able to cobble a plan together, eventually, certainly we'll need help with some fundraising. In the short term, I'm just here to give people an update of where this stands and what our efforts are. You know, obviously, this is an important piece of property for the town. I mean, and for the entire region. You know, Mount Pisgah is a delightful area, and much of the land we're talking about, many people think already is town owned and already is conservation land. Where people park on Linden is private property. And the trails that lead from there are on private property. And, you know, and they eventually connect up with conservation land. But, you know, but this is all currently private property, which could be sold off to whomever buys it. Our efforts are to conserve as much of this land as possible. 100% would be wonderful. But the plan we're trying to put together now is to, you know, sell off some of the frontage along Lyman, you know, and then around the corner of Lyman and Linden as a way of offsetting the cost of the property, because we simply don't have the funds available to purchase the whole thing. Again, we've been working with Sudbury Valley trustees as we have in the past, as sort of a facilitator for this process. You know, they're better able to put up some money up front to, you know, then allow us to get our money together and, oops, some echo, and, you know, apply for grants and, you know, and to work with other interested parties so that we can purchase the land all at once. The requirement from the lawyers is that the land be purchased all at once.
Did they give you any type of time frame when they were looking to close a deal?
Yes, no, there's not a formal time frame. Some of their, we've gotten some mixed messages from them, and it's hard to know exactly what the time frame would be. Most recently, it was the indication was that there is some willingness to wait. The fear amongst those of the Conservation Commission is that some other party may act first.
Do you think it might be worth getting, I mean, it's a very small subset on the call, but there are 24 attendees over there. Can we maybe see a raise of hands of those who would be interested in keeping this as recreation land available to the town?
Conservation.
Say about half.
There's, it's vacillating, I don't know why, but it's 14 hands up out
Yeah.
of 23 attendees. Out 15.
Yeah, I think people are figuring out how to raise their hands.
Yeah, it's a learning curve.
Did you want me to read the rest of my Zoom, how to raise your hand?
No, because everyone but one is actually a webinar participant who can raise their hand if they can find the button. 16 hands up out of 23 now.
Do we have, so I'm kind of curious where we have a little bit more than half. I don't know if anyone wants to speak, but is there any specific reason why there might be hesitation if someone's willing to say something or put something out there? Oh, I think a hand just shot up. Julie, Jean. So, there you go.
So Jean Mitchell.
And Julie.
It's actually Julie's been promoted first. Julie, you can start your video and ask your question.
I didn't really have a question. I listened in to the Conservation Commission when you talked about this property a few weeks ago. But I was kind of wondering, when you're talking about having to buy the whole thing, did you have a way of possibly being able to buy a chunk of it with the money that you know you have?
No, that's because of the sellers. They don't want to do that.
Okay, so they basically want one buyer for everything?
Yes.
That has, okay, that's what I
Yeah.
want to cover.
Yeah, they you know, this property has been in the family for a while. The Mr. Lohr, who had purchased it a number of years ago, passed away, and so his children, his wife is still alive. His children are trying to like sort of settle some, issues around properties and possessions, and they want to sell it as a unit.
Okay, so,
If I can also ask, there's somebody who wants to know if the pond is included in this transaction.
Yes.
okay.
And then Jean's here.
Jean's here, mic's open.
I was just wondering if there's some way to maybe draft in like a first right of refusal. That way, if someone does try to go for the property, at least we would know.
Oh, there already is a right of refusal.
Oh, perfect.
Yes, you're right. So we would absolutely know. The thing is, there are timelines around rights of refusal. So I think it's 120 days.
It is.
Yes. So we would have to come up with that money within 120 days, which we can't do.
And the other concern is the offer that might come in might be significantly higher than what you're working with now, potentially.
Yes, and again, not being a lawyer or a real estate lawyer, I don't know if there would be issues around valuation where we could, we would be allowed to buy it at the valued amount as opposed to an excessive amount. That might be the case, but it's still a bunch of money.
A question on the chat line. Janet asks, how much are they asking?
Yeah, I don't want to talk about that right now. I don't mean to be difficult, but some of the stuff because we're still negotiating, I want to keep that information. It's a lot of money, but I just want to keep that information private. Thank you, sorry.
May I, through the chair?
Sure.
With regard to funding, we just talked about free cash, potential cash reserves, but I don't want to neglect mentioning the CPA funds. On this annual town meeting warrant, there is an article that's coming back to town meeting for a revote, and that's to adopt the Community Preservation Committee. And if that is voted, and if it can get through the Attorney General's approval process, we'd then be able to kickstart the CPA process, which everyone here knows the town is already collecting surcharges on. So once that's up and running, additional funding for open space purposes or historic preservation or housing could be made available. So CPA funding could be made available for something like this, for this purchase or something like it.
John, have you approached any maybe private buyers or a collection of private buyers in the town to maybe get together and help, or is this just?
Oh no, yes, there's been discussions about that. Yes, that is, we have facilitated by another party. Yes.
Okay. Any more questions for John? Tell me I'm not.
Carol McDonald chats back, very true, Margaret, but those expenditures need town meeting approval.
Yes, and they do. And yes, they all need town meeting approval. Yes.
Okay. Well, and James says, hope we can get it. All right. I want to thank you, John, for coming. Oh, sorry.
Here's one more.
Bob Blair.
Is it Bob?
Yeah.
Why can't I? Oh, there's so many of you people hanging out in the audience. Hold on. Where's Bob?
Want me to try to find him?
Bob is about a third of the way down.
Oh, Bob Blair, hold on. Okay, Bob, your mic's open.
He may be muted. He may have muted himself.
Melissa Bouvier says, I'm sorry, I hope I got your name right. Does the family have the property listed for sale to any buyers?
I don't know that. Ashley from SVT may know that, but I don't know
She's
that.
here too.
Yeah, Bob's mic is,
I'm asking him to unmute it, but it looks like it's open at this time.
So
Bob, you
Ashley
can
says
speak.
not at this time.
Okay.
Thanks, Ashley.
Bob, you can ask your question.
No, I didn't. I was saying before I didn't have one, but I, hit the start video and mute and so forth. I just technologically screwed up, that's all. But I am for the purchase. I think that's an excellent idea. I hope we can get the funds.
Okay,
okay.
thank you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ashley, for coming tonight, and several of the Conservation Commission members.
So I think the general consensus here is that we should try to do our best to make this go forward.
Okay.
That would be, yeah. One final note, that, the trail through the newly purchased Wendler property and the other property around there has been opened. Unofficially, I think SVT and the Conservation Commission are going to try to have a virtual opening, but the trail's there. It's cleared, blazed. People should go out and enjoy it. You can access, one access point is on Peach Hill Road. It starts off as the Fifeshire Trail, which leads then north into Bolton. But if you go to the left, blazed red, that trail leads right through the newly purchased property, then down into the Harrington Conservation Restriction Area, and then from there down over to Lancaster Road, and it empties out right across the street from where many people park to access the 40 Caves area. So I encourage people to check it out.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you spending some time here with us.
And thank you for having me.
No problem.
And if there's any other questions, I'd be happy to come in a different time.
Okay, great.
Okay.
If you'd like to stick around, we'll be in the attendees and.
Okay.
Good.
Right.
We good, Mary? Okay. So the next thing we had on our agenda was to talk about the library septic, the replacement project. And I'm going to let Margaret bring us up to date on that.
Okay.
Hi, Evan.
Everyone meet Evan. Evan's a star.
Hello.
Okay. Yeah, so I want to give a few updates here. This has been a lengthy process of discussions and plan reviews by a small working group comprised of the Board of Health chair and the health agent, chair of the library trustees and the library director, the select board chair, and me, and our volunteer system designer, Evan Carloni. And so after all of our discussions over the past several months, the Board of Health is going to be holding a hearing on the plan and proposed variances next Tuesday, June 16th. And if the Board of Health approves the proposed systems design and variances, the town will then be able to proceed to the procurement phase with an invitation for bids for installation of the system and a contract award. And shortly thereafter, installation of the new septic system can finally begin. So I want to add, Progress to date on this project wouldn't have been possible without the leadership and expertise of our volunteer system designer, Evan Carloni. Evan is a resident of Berlin, and he's volunteered his assistance starting very early in this process. Since he was appointed by the Board of Selectmen back on September 3rd, 2019, as the library septic system design engineer and project manager, he has designed multiple septic system options for us, extensively reviewed the library parcel data, coordinated soil testing, attended every meeting of the working group and the group's meeting with DEP, consulted with our health agent and attended Board of Health meetings, prepared a required deed notice and other required documents, and drafted the legal notice for next Wednesday's virtual Board of Health hearing, which he will attend. And he'll then remain with us to oversee the project's successful completion. So Evan, the town of Berlin is extremely grateful to you for your hours of work and your expertise.
And I want to say the same. I think I can say that on behalf of the board and actually as a resident of Berlin. Thank you so much for all the things that you're doing.
Absolutely, no problem at all. I'm happy to help, really. I mean, there's not too many opportunities that come up in town where my exact expertise can be used. So I was more than happy to do it, you know, help out town and a neighboring property, and more than happy to help through this process. And it's been a fun one. It's been a fun one. It's certainly a good site for sure, but it's been fun, and I've enjoyed working with everybody. And of course, you know, thank you all to the select board. I mean, you guys give all so much more time than I've given. So thank you all too, and Margaret for helping through the process. And it's been fun so far.
So I just have to ask, you know, you happen to get into this line of work, and this actually was right up your alley. How long have you lived in Berlin?
Just a little bit over 3 years now. We moved in March of 2017 from Clinton. We were there in an apartment for a period of time. And, you know, we were looking in surrounding towns, and our house came on the market. Just felt like it was meant to be. And we love the town. We love our neighbors. It's been really great.
Well, I have to commend you for getting involved, you know, in 3 years. You know, that's not a very long time, but I really commend you for getting involved in the towns, you know, any way you can as far as a volunteer. It's very much appreciated.
So-
Is there anything you want to add about the project? Is it challenging?
I personally, so I believe in giving back, and I do enjoy challenges. I sort of knew, you know, a little bit going into it. I knew that the tight tank was the general what it was supposed to be, and so being that, you know, I do this day in, day out. I was thinking there's got to be another option. There's got to be another option. And that option, you know, hasn't come without some, you know, variances. There's certainly going to be some discussions next week with the Board of Health, because it's fitting in a very tight space, and the system is very much not conventional, but it could potentially help a lot in the long run, because a tight tank, the cost can add up very quick when it comes to how often it would need to be pumped. So when I had heard that the town was looking into a tight tank, I was thinking, you know what? I bet you I can figure out a way to fit it. So I'm hoping that everything goes well next week with the Board of Health, and I'll do my best to explain why you know, this system is what I think is the best option.
So Margaret and Evan, after the Board of Health next week, let's just say, fingers crossed, all goes well, what would be next steps?
I don't know how long it will take the Board of Health to approve. There are a number of variances that are requested. So I guess it's going to be determined. Evan, I don't know if there's anybody from the Board of Health here on this call, so I'm not really sure about how quickly we can move into the procurement process. We'll be ready to go as soon as we get those approvals. So unless there's some other step that has to be taken after the variances are granted and the plan is approved, we'll be ready to start drafting an invitation for bids.
So I think it was, and somebody from library, correct me, was it September of this year that we needed to have everything done by?
Yeah, so I have had several conversations with Bill Brookings, our health agent, on that. It's going to be tight, but the Board of Health is actually the authority with regard to the timing on, with regard to that particular timeline. And they, as long as we keep the Board of Health in the loop, he's advised me that they will be able to allow a slight extension of that deadline. Now, if we find that we're going to be significantly delayed, I do have a form that the Select Board would actually execute and submit to the Board of Health to request the extension. So, but we haven't gotten to that point just yet.
Okay. Now, just remember, Peg, it's called a
Hey, tiny
tight
tank.
tank.
Tiny, tight tank.
Hey, he said he needed to be pumped often. So if it needs to be pumped often, it's a tiny tank. So there you go.
And for those that are attending here, we had, when we all attended the meeting at DEP in Worcester, we received a little bit of good news too on the well, in that, well, with Evan's help in creating a system that didn't interfere with the well radius, the well is fine. It just needs to keep being tested. But it's a DEP essentially said, if it's not broke, don't fix it. So the well is okay and doesn't have to be replaced. We'll work on the septic system.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, I want to say it again. Thank you, Evan.
There's a question in the audience.
Oh, okay. Who we got?
Will there be an extension due to COVID?
I don't think on this particular project, I don't think there would be any extension due to COVID. It's a construction project, and construction has been considered an essential business. So I don't think there would be any extension specific to COVID.
Margaret, I haven't heard of it either. And I work for the health department up in Acton. So we haven't heard of anything in regards to an extension for failed Title V's or installations. These guys have kept working, and they've been pretty busy from what I've seen.
Okay, thank you.
Good to hear.
Okay.
All right. Well,
Thanks again, Evan. We look forward to continuing to work with you.
Yes.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And the next thing we had on our agenda was the annual town meeting and the annual town election updates and the process.
Okay. So annual town meeting, we'll start with the basics. The Select Board has approved to move forward with the annual town meeting on Monday, June 22nd at 7:30 p.m. It will be outdoors at Berlin Memorial School. I actually have a screen share on this, so folks can kind of look at where the town meeting would actually be held. Can everybody see that? So Barry had proposed, the town moderator had proposed, if it was going to be held outdoors, to have it next to the gym. And Chief Galvin drew up this sketch to show how the town meeting will be set up. So folks will be able to drive into the parking area just as they always do. And instead of entering the gym from the back door, there will be a check-in where it says CI. There'll be a check-in area heading toward where the basketball courts are over on the side of the school. And there is going to be room to provide for a socially distanced seating arrangement that's seating that's at least 6 feet apart. And that would hold up to 200 people. So while it's not ideal, it is going to be set up in the safest manner possible. You see that there are going to be light stations there. Fire Chief Clark has arranged for diesel-powered lights that are going to be able to shine on town meeting. And so right now we're working through all the many logistics to try to get this town meeting organized. We have several folks that are participating on a logistics planning group. We've got the police chief, a fire chief, highway facility superintendent. We've got the cable director, myself, Mary, the moderator, and the town clerk, and also the school principal and facilities director who are helping us out. So we intend to have everything ready in a way that's safest for everyone who chooses to attend. More details will be coming about what you might expect to see there. One thing, for example, will be town meeting materials. Rather than being handed paper, folks are going to be handed a Ziploc, gallon-sized Ziploc bag with their town meeting materials in them. So everything will be self-contained, nice and safe, and people can bring this stuff right to their seats. Now, last Thursday,
Asking if
We do have a-
participants need to bring their own chairs.
no, we actually are going to be using the school's chairs. Thank you for that question. If there's any more questions, let me know. I'm going to take this down so I can see everybody better. All right. Last Thursday, June 4th, the board hosted a virtual pre-town meeting and budget forum. So for anybody who is on this meeting tonight, the coffee talk tonight, to find the link to the video and also to the warrant and Finance Committee's FY21 recommended revised budget summary, go to our homepage at townofberlin.com, and under the news tab, click send your questions in now regarding the 2020 annual town meeting. And if you click on that, you'll see the links to the video, to the warrant, to the Finance Committee's budget summary. So you should be able to find all the information there. So I don't know if the board has anything else to add, if I've missed something on town meeting.
Well, I would just say that the annual town report has been mailed. It should be, if it hasn't arrived at your house, it should be arriving soon.
They were mailed yesterday. They went to the post office yesterday.
And thanks to all those who helped with it.
Okay, and on town election, if there are no more questions on town meeting, moving on to town election. The annual town election is going to be held on Monday, June 29th from the polling hours will be 12 noon to 4 p.m. The polling location will be in the usual place, 23 Linden Street in the lower level. And in the back on page 107 of your annual town report, there is a diagram that provides for social distancing due to COVID-19. So you can look at the diagram in your town reports. There are going to be many other COVID-19 protocols being followed at the election. Be prepared to see, if you do go to the polling place on election day, be prepared to see plexiglass dividers or partitions, election workers wearing masks and gloves and things like that. But the town clerk does encourage resident voters to vote absentee. And I'm going to read a message from her that I also read at the board's meeting on Monday night. The town clerk states, at this point in time, we are still under the governor's order for social distancing. Since a few weeks are needed to prepare for any election, the Board of Selectmen took this step of delaying both the annual town meeting and the annual town election with my encouragement to try to protect the right to vote and its election workers. We don't know the future, but we could be using this procedure even for the September 1 state primary and the November 3rd state election. Obtaining an absentee ballot. Okay, the application is on the town's website. Fill it out, sign it, and return it by email to townclerk@townofberlin.com, or utilize the drop box at the town offices at 23 Linden Street, or return the application by mail. The town clerk is very diligent about staying on absentee ballot applications, and she gets them out very, very quickly. Absentee ballots need about a week to 10 days to go through the US postal system, so please allow yourselves time. June 23rd is the last day to request an absentee ballot unless you've been hospitalized. Then the time limit extends to June 29th. But all ballots must be at the election, at the polling place by 4 p.m. on election day. And any comments can be directed to the town clerk, preferably by email.
Can you talk about Linda Yates's campaign to run as a write-in for library trustee?
Okay, Eloise wanted to note that announced write-in candidate, Linda Yates, Linda Yates has announced her write-in candidacy for library trustees. And Eloise also said that any other candidates who announce their write-in candidacy, we'll pass that along as well.
Jean Mitchell was in the audience, asked to be heard, and I'm guessing it might be on this.
Okay.
Yeah, it was just to mention that Linda, who's been an awesome volunteer, has graciously offered to be a write-in candidate. So we would be wonderful if people could support her. She's been a great friend to the library.
Okay.
And anybody else who wants to run a write-in campaign can notify Eloise, and we can promote them equally.
We'd convey that information. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess I'd also like to add just briefly that you can also, you can fill out that form for absentee ballot right online. You can either print it and sign it and take a picture and email that back, or scan it. And that's another easy way to get it back to the town clerk if you don't want to drop it off or take it to the mailbox.
Yeah, we have Barry wants to reiterate again that the absentee ballots can be returned to the town clerk by placing them in the lockbox in the front entry of the town offices.
Okay, are there any other questions about town meeting or the election? I'm seeing nothing. Is there any other comments from the board? All righty. Then we did have a last addition to the things that we thought might be of interest to people. Peg, maybe you would like to say why we have Chief Galvin with us tonight.
So it really started with Mr. Rager. I'll have to call him Barry or he'll yell at me. A couple weeks ago when we had the pre-town meeting, and he had a moment of silence as a reflection of all the issues that are going around regarding diversity and police and protests and rallies. So I had reached out to Chief Galvin and just said, hey, can you give me just a brief overview of what your department goes through for diversity training, for cultural training? How are your folks trained if ever there's an issue in town, if there's ever an issue out of town where Berlin Police is called to assist? So out of that came a, hey, what are you doing on Thursday night? Want to come to Coffee Talk? And well, there he is down on the bottom looking rather dapper in his uniform. So that's why he's here. I figured it would be a good forum for those here on the phone or on Zoom, rather, to have an opportunity to talk to him, especially where this is being recorded. It'll be played back on Berlin TV, just so that everyone hears the same message, just so that everyone knows what's going on with our police department. And as much as they are here to support us, you know, part of our responsibility and our accountability is to support them and what we can do to help them to know that as much as they have our backs, we have their backs. So that's why I invited Tom to come along and have a chat.
Excellent.
Hi, Tom.
How are you? Good. So thank you very much, and thank you for this opportunity. It's really been obviously a lot going on in our country and regionally since the murder of George Floyd. And I think everyone who has watched the video, it was a hard video to watch. And having been in law enforcement for well over 20 years, to watch that and see what happened, and to try and understand why something like that could happen this day and age, and looking at all the tactics and things that we're trained in, why something like that would have been done is just, it's still hard to wrap your head around. But I think we're very fortunate here. At least I like to think, and when I look and when I go to conferences across the country, we seem to be very far ahead of the curve here in the Commonwealth. You know, I think back to 2016, I think was the first time that I actually experienced some implicit bias training. And that's something we begin to incorporate to all training for our law enforcement officers here in Massachusetts and here in Berlin. Also, de-escalation techniques is a very important thing that we've done through our in-service training and other additional trainings. But I don't know, just I don't want to dominate tonight and this meeting. I think there's going to have to be a greater conversation within the community. And I hope as we get post-COVID that it's something we're able to do face-to-face, because there's a lot of emotion tied to this, and to do it in a virtual atmosphere is very difficult. I'm actually going to start that this weekend with a group of residents that have asked to have a conversation. I'm going to meet with them on Saturday. And I think that's going to be an opportunity to start to get the feel of the community and see what direction we need to go. I also think we're very fortunate in some of the policies we have in place. We already have in our use of force policy a duty to intercede, so that if an officer observes another officer using force that is excessive, they have a duty to intercede and to stop that. That was one of the real troubling things in that video. There were so many other officers around. You have 3 that you see regularly in that video that are there either also kneeling on George Floyd or not doing anything. You know, that can't be the case. I look back at my career, and you know, one of the very first arrests I made in my career was a neighboring community's police chief. Not afraid to take action against another police officer if it's necessary. And you know, we all have to be that way. And you know, we have a very solid group of men and women here in Berlin, and you know, we treat people right. But we're human. You know, there are times that officers may make mistakes. I've gotten calls from the public where the public has said, I don't feel like I was treated properly by one of your officers. And we work on that. You know, we talk with the officers, we talk with those members of the public. We've had instances where we've gotten those people together again in another setting and had them meet multiple times. You know, there's a human factor to this, and we have to be very conscious of that. There's going to be a lot of political rhetoric that flies back and forth, and we have to make sure through our conversations locally that the importance of anti-racism and, you know, excessive force by police officers doesn't get lost in our community. That we have these conversations here in Berlin as they're needed, and that you as residents, you know, raise the questions if they're there. If you see something wrong, I need to know about. That's very, very important to convey that message to me. If you feel our police department's doing something wrong. But what I can say over the past week or so is the feedback from the residents has been phenomenal. The people that have stopped when they've seen us and thanked us for what we do. I actually got a letter. I have a letter right here on my desk. You know, one of the things that's come up is the talk of defunding the police. That's something that really scares me. You know, if we're going to reallocate funds for different things and maybe take some of the things off the plate of the police, especially dealing with mental illness and a lot of the things that we deal with on a daily basis, that would be phenomenal. What scares me about defunding the police is one of the things that usually gets dropped when funding is taken away is training. And in this time, you know, that's one of the most important things that we don't lose. But, you know, this is a letter about, you know, someone that we dealt with mental illness over the past couple of weeks. And it's a thank you letter. And it's a thank you letter for the compassion and the gratitude that they feel our officers, you know, showed that, you know, this individual who's now getting the treatment they need. And as this woman says, thank you for your compassion and kindness in dealing with a person in the grips of a bipolar episode. You know, I have my son back, coherent, grateful, and present. You know, it's nice to see that and to hear that, and that's the kind of service that our police department is delivering to people.
You have a question from Jean Mitchell.
Okay.
With the Quinn bill gone, do Berlin police officers get any tuition reimbursement if they want additional training?
So within our contract, we have an educational incentive that because of the Quinn bill leaving, so officers still are, there is an education incentive for officers that pursue associate, bachelor's, or master's degree. And there is also a tuition reimbursement portion of the contract that if there is funding available, that we will reimburse officers for additional coursework towards those degrees.
Great.
So we also try to, Mark, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to ask, but there's also additional training beyond those educational incentives, correct?
Absolutely. So we have a minimum of 40 hours of training. And I really stress that that's a minimum of 40 hours of training that we're required to do by the Commonwealth. But we try and take advantage of every training opportunity that's out there, whether it be online or different classes and then seminars that officers can go to in the region. A lot of great training. And the difficult part of in-service training is that's the bare minimum that we have to provide to all officers in the Commonwealth to meet statute. But on July 1st, when we start that training for the year, that may be what we need that day. Things often change throughout the year, and now we have to wait another year for our training to catch up to what that is. So if we can send officers to specialized classes throughout the year or get them other types of training throughout the year, it really becomes help. We actually have a few officers here that are actually trained to be instructors. And then even outside of their duties here as police officers, there's officers, including myself, that have really taken to police training and the importance of it. We're very fortunate in our region here. We have a very progressive program at Fitchburg State University. And that program is now, instead of taking a police officer, hiring a police officer and training them for 20 weeks and then putting them out on the street, this is a 5-year program. So we take kids that graduate high school. They start a criminal justice major in college. They spend 4 years of their undergrad. Then after they have received their degree, they do a police academy. And one of our officers, actually Sergeant Rich Gilchrist, who's working tonight, is actually the lead drill instructor for that academy. And so then we build beyond that, and the students stay and they complete a master's degree. And I'm actually an instructor in the master's program. And I actually taught a class last fall on professional responsibility and police community relations, and it really touches on a lot of this. And I think to look at that and to look at the future of the police department, these types of programs are very important. Because historically, and I look back at when I started in policing, and most of the senior officers that I worked with were Vietnam era veterans. We've historically, and there's a correlation between police and the military. The people have been hired that are veterans, and we absolutely need to take care of our veterans. But we've also seen that in taking care of our veterans, there's a lot of trauma that veterans go through. There's a lot of things that they have seen through combat that we need to work with them. And it's not always the best answer to put them back out in the community right away, especially in the capacity as a police officer. When you look at the duties and the expectations of our officers today, I sometimes wonder why anyone wants to do this. It's very, very difficult. I read something, and I actually have it up on my other computer screen, that I don't know who wrote it, but I saw it online. And it's kind of what people's expectations are of a police officer today. And it says every officer needs to be an empathetic, well-spoken, SEAL-trained ninja with double majors in psychology and social work, who has no bills, no nerves to fray, and enforces the law completely, objectively, while also using discretion at all times, unless it's going to result in arresting or not arresting the wrong person at the wrong time for the wrong thing, in the opinion of every member of the public. It's almost impossible. It's a hard job to do, and I'm impressed at the men and women that are signing up every day to do it. But when tragedies occur, as in this wasn't a tragedy, this was a crime that happened to George Floyd. When these things occur, we need to continue these discussions. One of the things, I was talking to another member of the community over the last couple of days, is these things have happened and we've had discussions. We had Ferguson, Missouri. I can name 100 of them. And that's one of the problems. I can name 100 of them. but we have a discussion for a short period of time, or we have discussions regionally, and we haven't necessarily affected change. There's several things that are going to the legislature here in the Commonwealth that can affect change. One of it is certification for our officers. One thing that you may be shocked to find is that if you're a police officer in the Commonwealth, you commit a crime, you maybe use excessive force, you're determined to be a liar, and you do your job, guess what? Another agency can hire you. And it does happen. In many other states, we're only one of 6 states that doesn't have this certification process. So we do a great job in training, but we don't have some of the safeguards in place to keep the bad apples out. And they're looking at enacting this type of certification, though, so that if you are adjudicated and found to be a liar or a criminal or whatever it may be, you can never be a police officer again. And these things are very important. I think they're important for building trust with the communities, and also building trust and making sure that we're recruiting the best people. So there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of things that are going on. One of the things that I hoped by tonight is that I could kind of start to gauge the community and what we need to do going forward in terms of public forums. So what I would ask is for people that see this is reach out to me, call me, email me. Let me know what your concerns are, your thoughts are. As we get to post-COVID, I hope that we can do something more in person. Because again, I said, there is a lot of emotion behind this, and to do it virtually, you lose some of that and you lose some of the connection, because I can see the 6 panelists that are here, but there's an audience and all I can see is a list of names. And it's hard when you have such a discussion that really affects lives to have that in this nature. So I would hope that as we move forward, we're able to do that in a live fashion.
We have a question.
Yep.
I'll just read it.
Yep.
How would you respond to a resident who says these racial tensions with police don't have anything to do with us, since our community is largely white and we don't have those issues here?
The issues just exist in all of society. And we don't only service the people that live here in Berlin, we service the people that drive through this community every day, that come and shop in our malls and eat in our restaurants. So those areas serve a diverse population. So, and racism or any type of bias is not only about the color of your skin. There's many other things. So, we have to be open to everything, and we have to understand that people are different and people are going to interact, and we have to do it fairly for everybody. So to say that we're largely a white community and it's not a problem here, that's not fair to everybody. It's we really have to make sure that we're addressing and we're looking at everyone we serve, and that's anyone who could be in this community at any time.
Lisa, I didn't know if you wanted to mention that you had asked to have something put on the agenda for Monday.
Oh, I had just asked that we issue a statement as the board condemning racism and hopefully instituting some action items so that we can address this going forward.
Okay, yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
I would just ask, is that something maybe that we could put out beforehand, and maybe as other department heads and members, we could all sign on to as part of a community initiative?
I think that would be fabulous.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah,
that would be great.
I just felt it was important that we stand up and say we recognize this as a problem, and we will do our best to try to help with the situation.
So and the biggest thing is always continuing the discussion. That's how we're going to make headway in anything, is to not let it die, not forget it until there's the next incident that happens somewhere. That we continue discussion, that we answer people's concerns, and that we continue to move forward and grow.
What would you tell someone if they were showing racism? I mean, having the hard conversation.
It's hard. I can look back early in my career and superior officers, and again, I look back at who they were and what their life experiences were, and some of the things that came out of their mouth was shocking. We don't hear those things anymore. I don't say they don't exist, but we don't hear it as often. So it's hard. But it's, anyone can be bothered by, even if you're the one that's projecting that on somebody, if you're using terms and you're degrading someone, It doesn't mean you can't be a victim of that by somebody else for some other reason. And that's what people understand is that, you know, a lot of times, you know, that projection from someone is because of insecurities of their own. And you're trying to help people work through those and help them understand it. But you just have to help people understand that their words or their actions, what the effect is on other people. That they could fall victim to it as well. And we're not going to change everyone's beliefs, but we change outwardly what we see and how and the thought process they use to react and to do their jobs. That, you know, that's what I look at is that, you know, I hope I can change people and you know, that if I have someone that's a problem, that I can change them and make them a better person. But at least I want to make them objective in how they do things and how they make decisions.
Thanks. Thank you.
So Tom, what can we do to support you? Not just you, but all of you.
You know, I think a lot of it is just talk with it. You know, we went back and forth with a few things, and one of the big things is just communication. It's one of the biggest things. It's one of the biggest things we're going to struggle with younger police officers, as we see with young officers and young people and these nowadays. That lack of personal interaction. But one of the biggest things is getting to know each other. I've had some great conversations with people about, you know, officers that have come off of nights and are on days, and now they get to talk to them and see them, and they had heard things about them, but now once they talk to them and get to know them, they understand who they are, and that, you know, maybe that was just rumors, and maybe that was someone had a bad experience or got a ticket that they didn't like. So a lot of it is just try to have some personal interaction. It's hard because, you know, we don't have a lot of sidewalks and people aren't walking around, and it makes it difficult at times. But what I would say is if you see an officer out, say hi, engage them. I encourage my officers to have those conversations with people. Some it's more difficult than others. We have differing personalities, obviously. I think that's one of the biggest things. And then, you know, if there's concerns, don't be afraid to confront and say something to the officer and have a valuable conversation with them as well. Because, you know, having had some of those discussions with people personally myself, the outcome is really usually, you know, it's gratifying, and that's where you then form a long-term relationship, and it creates a stronger community for us all. Yes,
Margaret.
I have a few comments to read, but I want to just share, you know, I just want to share my own personal thoughts. You know, it's very easy for us to paint populations or groups of people with a broad brush, but I can only imagine right now, you know, as with Black and brown, our Black and brown people in our country, police officers, there are so many good police officers, and I know that this hurts for the police officers who are good, who are trying to serve the community, their communities to the best of their ability. And Chief, I just want to say that I appreciate everything that you and your officers do day in and day out to serve the community as best as you possibly can. You know, while my heart goes out, and you know, this is actually a time for us to really show empathy. This is a time for empathy. This is a time for us to allow ourselves to walk in someone else's shoes and understand what it might be like for them. So anyway, I could go on and on, but we have several questions and comments here. So I'm going to read one. Barry Yeager says, the attitudes of people in our community, though mostly white, are still part of the problem that keeps racism as a part of American society. From Susan Henry, she asked Lisa to please send the board statement that's going to be voted on Monday night to the superintendent of schools and the school committee as well. And Lisa says, will do. And we'll do that. Evie writes, Tom, very well spoken. Glad to have you as chief to represent our community. Love your idea of ongoing communication.
and I'm sure, Evie, that we'll talk and we'll have something at 19 Carter once we're able to reopen.
All right. I appreciate you giving us some time here tonight.
I appreciate you giving me the time. It's you know, it's good for all of us to have these conversations, and we have to broach the topic and we have to talk about it, and I'm glad that I can be part of it.
All right. Well, are there any more questions for Tom before we wrap it up?
I guess I would also like to mention that there will be an event and the lawn at First Parish Church on Saturday for those who would like to come out and show their support for the Black Lives Matter movement. It's from 2 to 3:30. Bring your signs. It'll be socially distanced, and bring your mask.
Okay.
That's something I will be at. You won't see me in my uniform there. I'm going to bring my kids. I think it's important for my kids also to learn from this and to see how people express their First Amendment rights and free speech. So you'll see me there. I think I'm going to try and bring some of my neighbors' kids as well. That'll be after I go to. We talked about town meeting earlier. I'm going to try to attend the beginning of Southborough's outdoor town meeting to see how it functions. So I'll come from that. But yeah, I'd be glad to see as many members of the community there as possible. The best.
And definitely bring your kids. Going to something like this is really a very positive experience.
One thing I think I would add is the policy. After we take a look at it on Monday night, we might want to share it with the police department, fire department, superintendent of schools, just to see, if they want to sign on, or maybe they have a suggestion. If that's good with the board, I think we could talk about that on Monday night.
Well, Chris, it might not be a bad idea to expand it and let the town sign in on it too. If there's any way, whether we leave something at the general store, we leave something at the library when it opens, we leave something at 19 Carter. So it's just not the boards. It's just not the people who
Right.
are elected, that we let the people in town sign in on it too. So it is truly community based. It is community driven, so that everyone is accountable. Everyone is responsible for our action. And you know what? We're responsible for other people's actions too, and talking to them. So if there's some way that we could open it up to the town, that would be great.
Yeah, let's start the hard conversation. All right. Is there any other questions about anything this evening? I was just going to ask the board members today when we had an agenda setting meeting. We talked about a 6 p.m. Zoom before the annual town meeting, rather than doing it at 7 o'clock with the confusion of town meeting down at the school. If there's any need for a 6 p.m. meeting, a meeting before town meeting, just wanted to make sure you're available.
Yeah, I mean.
Okay, maybe there's no need for one, but we did want to have a place to be able to meet. We weren't sure if there would be one at the school. So I think Mary was going to post that as a Zoom meeting at 6 o'clock, and anyone's welcome to join.
Margaret, before we go, well, we're not going anywhere. Before we hop topics, do you want to reiterate to folks that the area is going to be sprayed for mosquitoes?
I forgot. I should have mentioned that.
In case people have any concerns.
Yes, Worcester Mosquito Control will be there the Friday immediately prior to town meeting to spray. That said, folks who come, feel free to bring your bug repellent, and you don't need sunscreen, but bug repellent. So, unless the lights are real bright.
Is our town meeting going to be rain or shine?
There's a rain. Okay, so it's scheduled for June 22nd, Monday, June 22nd. The rain date is going to be Wednesday, June 24th.
Same.
In which case Barry would be there on the 22nd and declare a delay to June 24th.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I also, this is an off agenda item, but I wanted to just note that a recreational marijuana proponent, C3 Industries, is going to be holding a virtual community outreach meeting next Tuesday evening. I don't know what time.
It's at 6:30, I believe.
6:30 p.m. And I want to make it clear that this is not a town sponsored meeting. This is a responsibility of the proponent, and it's a meeting they are holding. I will be there as a moderator, but not on behalf of the proponent. I will be there for the town to try to keep the discussion on topic, because at a community outreach meeting, there are very specific things the proponent is required to address under the law and CCC regulations, and also the board's policies. So folks can find the notice that was posted by the proponent on our website, www.townofberlin.com, and under the news tab, I think the heading is virtual, I think it says virtual community outreach meeting, Tuesday, June 16th at 6:30 p.m. And click on that tab and you'll be able to see the notice. Now, I want to at least share the toll-free number. So for people who are listening in tonight by telephone, the proponent does have a toll-free number that folks will be able to call in on, and that is 1-888-475-4499. And you would just have to enter the meeting ID number on your phone pad, 507-043-953 when prompted. If you have any questions about that, you can give us a call here and we can share that information with you as well.
Margaret, is there any way that we might be able to get a hold of, oh, her name is escaping me, cable girl, Brittany, here we go. Brittany, to get that number posted on like the Berlin station, so it, for those who might be watching, so it can come up and, you know, just go on a rotating basis.
Oh, on the bulletin board, okay.
Yeah.
Yep, to put the toll-free number up.
Yep.
And also where to point people to the notice itself, okay.
Correct.
Yep.
Okay. Any other business?
Oh, question from Evie.
It's
So
2 o'clock to 3:30 on Saturday. It's going to be in front of the First Parish Church.
The question was, tell the crowd again when the protest is being held in Berlin.
It's a rally.
Okay, rally. Sorry.
And you said what time, Lisa?
It's 2 to 3:30.
Okay.
And it came together rather quickly, so it's starting to be posted and should be on Berlin Neighbors Connect shortly. We just got all the final approvals and got everything worked out, so you should be seeing more about it
Okay.
imminently.
All right. All righty, then if there are no more questions and no more, any more comments, then I guess I would call for an adjournment.
Well, do we want to open it up before we go to see kind of what's on people's minds? I mean, this was like the whole point behind Coffee Talk, for folks to come to us.
Yeah. That's
with
what I
what
did ask, if there was any questions on anything. If there are, please raise your hand.
Look at that. We have answered everyone's questions tonight. We have solved the world's problems.
Yes, we have. All right. I thank everybody for coming.
Absolutely, we appreciate this. I mean, this started, you know, a couple years ago for us to come to you to find out what's on your mind. So we're grateful that you take the time out of your evening to sit with us and talk to us and hear us. And as always, it doesn't just mean that we're only going to be available during a coffee talk. You know how to get all of us, you know, all our email addresses. We're not too hard to find, especially now since everyone stays home. But if there's anything on your mind, reach out to any one of us and we are more than happy to help. That's why we are here.
That's right. Okay.
What are there? Oh, okay.
Just thank yous.
There's a lot
which
of
is
thank
nice.
yous.
Let's see. So Melissa asked how many people there were. I had 23 at the beginning, and some folks have dropped off.
23, not including the panelists.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Awesome.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care. Have a good night.
Yeah, you too. Thank you.
All
Bye-bye.
right, thank you.